Hi, welcome back, I'm James. So in today's episode we're going to complete the 3D modelling work on this railway carriage. We did all the 2D bits last time and got the basic body shell or half a body shell created. Today we'll add all the windows, the panel lines, etc, and make one or two optimisations with a view to printing this thing in one piece with all the interior and everything else. So without further ado, let's get stuck in. So this is where we left off last time. We got a half a coach body done. Now what I've done here is I've selected that face and I'm using a shell command. Put in the thickness of the shell, and that's going to remove the material to turn our thing into kind of like an open box. That's pretty good. What I've done now is selected the floor. I've used a tool called convert entities, which will draw on a line around the outside of that floor plane, and I can extrude that through the body of the coach that we've created, and that will get rid of the roof and give us sort of a nice open shape. Now in this case I would want to make the roof as a separate piece, so there's the logic behind doing just that. Now you can see it looks a bit distorted. Fortunately in SolidWorks there is a perspective tool. If I turn that on, the thing now has a little bit of perspective. It looks slightly less odd. So next up we're going to take our side drawing that we did last time, and for those two compartments you'll see it's I think 53.6 millimeters long. So I'm selecting the end face of this coach and creating a new sketch plane referencing off of that end. So I've set it to 53.6, reversed it, so now I've got a new plane, and that is kind of like two compartments along the body of the carriage. So I can look onto that work plane, convert entities of these two surfaces. There you go, we've got a join line between them there, so we can just remove that. So we've got one complete profile, and again I'll do an extruded cut and I'll remove 3/5 of the carriage. So I'm only going to work on those two compartments that I drew. So a good question might be, why on earth did I draw the whole thing only to reduce it to 2/5 of its length? Well, it didn't take me long to do it that way, and it has the advantage that if at some point in the future I do need the drawing of the whole thing, I can kind of dial back through the history of this drawing and I can extract a complete body shell back from where I was. It just so happens it didn't really take me any longer to do it this way, and this suits how I'm going to build the rest of the carriage, so that's the reason. So next task is to bring in the artwork that I prepared with all my two-dimensional geometry for the doors and the windows. And you can see I've pasted that onto a new work plane or a new sketch that I've created on the side of the coach, and I'm just deleting the bits and pieces that I don't need here to leave myself with the window apertures. Now I appear to have lost a bit of footage because I have previously done an extruded cut on the top half of this coach to create a little rebate. You'll see it in a minute when I turn the drawing round, and I don't know where the footage of that has gone. However, that process I'm going to repeat in a minute elsewhere, so let's not worry too much about that. Now you can see those rectangles where the windows are, which have been highlighted in a kind of a dark bluey colour. That indicates that the profile of those windows is complete. They make sort of complete rectangles, which are joined at the corners. So what I can do now is use the extruded cut tool and just remove those rectangles. And I can set a depth here. I'm choosing to go through all, that means through the complete structure of the thing, and there you go, you can see how the windows have been created. So I've now brought in the profile of the lower body, so the Tumble home region, and this is an area that I want to cut away to leave the beading around the perimeter of the panel. Now I did this previously, I lost the footage around the windows, so you can see how I do it here. Again, the 2D drawing I created previously, you would have seen that in video number 1. So I'm just lining that up with the correct spot on the side of the coach. I seem to be struggling with this for some reason. Making a bit of a dog's dinner of it. That should automatically just snap on there. We'll get there in a minute. So this profile then, again I'm going to do an extruded cut, and when that removes the material it'll leave the beading around the edge of that sort of tumble home panel. But it's slightly more complex here because that tumble home or turn under is a curved section. So when I come to my extruded cut tool, what I'm going to do is set it to be offset from that curved surface. So I select the surface I want it to be offset from, and it gives me a little preview there, and there you go. It's quite straightforward really. And again, we can turn on that perspective view and the thing looks slightly less odd. So the next thing I'm going to do here is to create some framing around the windows. And this might seem a little bit counterintuitive and peculiar, but this is the way I'm going to do it. So I've selected that inner face of the coach and created a new sketch. And now I'm using the rectangle tool to fill in where I cut those window apertures. There we go, so that's my windows filled back in again, or at least I've created profiles for the windows. And what I'm going to do is extrude those profiles outwards, and I can give it a suitable thickness. And what I want to do is set that to be the thickness of the frames that I'm after. So there we go. It seems to have put the windows back in, but you can see there that the what will be the frame material is now set back from the face of the coach to kind of produce the, I think it's called the Belection moulding or whatever, the sort of the framework that goes around. So I've selected onto that new face, created a sketch. I've used the offset entities tool to basically create a profile offset from the outside of the rectangle. Here we go, doing it again. So there we go, that's given me a shape. I'm going to do the same for each of these windows. Oops, look at that one, I've got that wrong, I put it on the outside. So as I do the offset entity, I can reverse the offset as I've just done now. Do it again here. So I've now got 4 new profiles, and I'll do an extruded cut again and remove that material just as I did before, and that should leave us with the window panes, if you like, being framed nicely. So I come back to my 2D drawing here, and I'm just going to measure, again measuring off the drawing. This is terrible, but it's all right, it's not the end of the world. So I'm just working out how big these top panels need to be. So we've got a bit of framing there of 0.58 and 2.35. So that extrusion that I did previously, I'm just kind of reversing my drawing back a little bit to get me back to where those offset lines were. And now I can do another offset. I can put that value in that I've just measured off the other drawing. There we go. So that's given me my top frame or glazing bead or whatever we want to call it. And again, offset that one. Just remove the little bits between it. So now it's gonna leave us that top bar. Now I can select both of those. I'm going to use the copy tool. I'm going to select the corner of the window as a reference, and then I can copy that across to the remaining 3 windows. Delete the little bits between. So that's now given us 8 profiles. And because I've already told it that I want to extrude this sketch through the whole thing, I can just click the little traffic light button at the top of my screen to rebuild the drawing. Fusion and other pieces of software have a slightly different way of doing it, but it's all basically the same. And there we go. So we've now got starting to look quite good. Now we need to put some doors on here. Okay, so apologies here, I've lost another piece of the footage, the bit where I actually show doing the doors, but the door windows are exactly the same as I did the other windows, and the cutouts around the doors, the reveal, was done by just simply drawing various rectangles and extruding them in. Now what I'm doing here is on the inside face of the coach, around where the window sort of glazing will sit, so I'm creating a rectangle, and if I turn the image around, you'll be able to see exactly where that sits. What I'm going to do here is do another extruded cut, and I'm going to cut away the material into the wall of the coach. And that's going to create a shallow rebate in which I can fit some microscope glass as glazing material. So there you go, you can see how that's produced a little reveal for the glazing. Now that's also had the effect of thinning down the mass of the window frames and make it look a little bit more acceptable from the outside. Now I don't like this lip that's running around the inside of the end wall and along the roof line, so I'm creating a sketch here, a simple rectangle, which is going to cover those parts that I don't like. And you'll see this when we pop this into 3D. There we go, I'm going to extrude that away to cut away a sort of rectangular slice through this body, and I'm going to go up to the surface of the inside of the wall, or the end of the coach, and that's now got rid of some of that unsightly detail. I'll do the roofs separately on this particular project. So we're now onto the detail for the end of the coach, and that's to sort of create the vertical panelling. Now this is again relatively straightforward. I've created that artwork previously, and I'm just going to line it up there with the corner of that body, and there we go. So we've got everything, but I'm going to offset that line because I need to complete that third panel there on the left hand side. So create a bit of offset geometry. I'm doing the same up the top, and this is just as you may remember from the first video of this two-parter. I don't like the splines as they are generated from my 2D CAD software, so I'm basically just copying those with a spline in SolidWorks. Now it's essential that these outlines, which are going to form the what will be 3 panels on here and 6 on the coach when it's finished, it's essential that these lines all meet in the corners. So I've just extending those vertical ones out. Can you see there's a gap there? So I'm just dragging them up till they cross over, and then I can trim the lines away. And just as before, when I've got the complete profile, it will highlight it in blue. Then I know I'm ready to proceed and the next operation will work. If I try extruding these before the profile is sort of completed, it'll create all sorts of problems and we'll get stuck. And this is often one of the hiccups that sort of when you're learning to do this for the first time, you can't work out why stuff isn't working. Well, with 3D modelling you need to, it's always a 2D profile that's either extruded or cut away, and if your 2D profile isn't complete then there will be problems. So I'm just here making sure that these profiles are all properly joined up. I'm using the trim tool to take away the little bits of waste. Okay, so we've got a little detail to fix here, and for now I'm going to do that. I might need to get a proper reference to see how that's supposed to go, but that'll do for the minute. Now I can see that this third panel on the left hasn't been highlighted, so there must be a reason why that is the case. Somewhere here there is going to be a problem. And the problem I think is with that spline, so rather than mess around I'm just recreating it again using the offset feature. So we need to make sure these two are joined up, and they're not. There we go, we got there in the end. So this ought to be a straightforward extruded cut. I'm anticipating a problem here. You'll see what it is in just a second. So we need to set the depth of the cut. So you can see here that the problem is that extrusion doesn't run around the tumble home at the bottom of the rear end of the coach there. So the solution to that is to create a new sketch profile that's going to kind of extrude horizontally across the coach. So I've used the offset entities tool here to create the profile that I want. Hopefully we'll see how this will work in just a second. There we go. So you can see here I've created that profile on the kind of over the centre line of the coach. So now I can run an extruded cut. But this time I'm going to take it up to the inner surface of that piece of beading there. So that's how we're going to do it. And so I'll basically just repeat that process. So create a new sketch. And if I come over to that surface over there and click convert entities, it's going to copy all of that geometry across onto my new sketch, which is pretty good. It's a bit of a time saver. And now I'll extrude that all across. And we'll repeat this a third time. Now what I should have done here is created this sketch on the inside face of that outside of the coach and extruded this back into the centre of what I'm doing. But I didn't do it. I've repeated exactly what I've done before, so it's created this little problem here in that I've cut some of that beading off the corner. So that's a bit annoying. So we're going to have to repair that. So I've selected that face there for a new sketch. I've copied all of my lines from that other face you just saw me click on. And now we will extrude this as a solid mass rather than a cut. Just as soon as we've got the profile prepared. So this is going to have to be a two-step process. The first step will be to put the material back more or less where we need it, but as you can see we're left with an annoying little triangular piece sticking out, but that's going to be dead easy to remove. So what we have to do is select a vertical face. It doesn't really matter which one, but let's go with there. And we're going to create a new sketch. Now if I make the drawing transparent here, we can see all the lines behind it. And what I'm doing is going to use the Convert Entities tool to basically copy those lines that already exist onto my sketch. I will now draw some more in, and there you go, you can see we've got a triangular profile which we can do an extruded cut upon and remove that, and that's going to tidy that corner up. There we go. Now if I turn the sort of the colour back on, we can see what we've got. And although there's little lines there indicating there's a little sketch, in reality that's now a solid piece. So that's pretty good. Quite happy with how that's turned out. So this thing's nearly done now. What I've done is created a sketch here, which is the profile of the seats. And whilst we're drawing this, let's put some seats in it. So very simple, just drawn the profile, you can very quickly extrude that, give it some thickness. There we go, so we've got half a carriage with our seating. But look, we've got a little detail that's come out here. It's kind of projected through the turn under of the coach side. So there's a few ways around it. I'm going to deal with this in probably the simplest way possible. By creating a sketch, converting the entities or the lines of those little shapes, we can do an extruded cut up to the surface of the side of the carriage, and there we go. That's got it pretty good. Now I've chosen the fillet tool. We can put a little bit of a radius on some of these seats just to sort of tidy them up a little bit. This is third class seating, so that profile will probably do. If it was first class, we could put some armrests in and things as well. Now those seats are eating into the rebate that I'd created for the glazing. So when these things are made, I do still want to be able to get some glazing in, so we'll have to trim those back. But it's all looking pretty good so far. I'm pleased with all of that. So you'll be pleased to know that we're nearly there now. What I'm going to do is I've selected that surface or that face of my model, and I'm going to basically mirror it, which will create a second part, or a copy, which is a mirror image of the one we had. So what I'll do is I'll save it. That's what I'm doing here. And now in SolidWorks we can take parts that we've drawn and assemble them in to sort of make a complete thing. So in this case it's going to be a complete coach. So I take my first part and I'm going to insert the mirrored part. And what we need to do is join those up. And the easiest way to do it is to select faces or edges. We can hit the mate tool and it will line them up. Now for most occasions we're going to need to do that in 2 axes in order that our 3-dimensional model will work out. So there we go, we've got our 2 compartments. We've got an end and a centre compartment. Now for this particular carriage that we're drawing, the end compartments basically the same, and there should be 3 centre compartments. So what I'm doing is I'm saving this model as it is first of all, and then what I'll do is I'll split it into separate models to create an end compartment and a centre compartment, with the idea being that we can, when we've got 2 separate pieces, we can join them, create another assembly, and we can add as many compartments as we like. So how are we going to go about doing that? Well, let's see. So I haven't created my basic files, and I want to create one that I can edit. So here we go. So I've selected that face, I've created a new reference plane, and we're going to offset it by, I think it's 1.5 millimeters or something, which is sort of half the thickness of that compartment sort of divider. There you go, you can see we've got our work plane on there. So I'll just draw a rectangle around the model. And if we pull this back to look at in 3D, you'll see what comes next. We do an extruded cut, and I'm going to delete that. There we go, that end compartment. So we've now got just a centre compartment. Which we can save. I can come back to my model, repeat the process you just saw, but this time I'm going to delete the end compartment to leave me with, so I could delete the centre compartment to leave me with just the end compartment. This will make sense as I rotate this into 3D. There we go. So now we can create a new assembly, and we can join these two separate part files that we've now made and build it up into what's going to become a 5-compartment third class coach. So there we go, there's one end. I've got my second end. I'm just dropping these on very quickly just for the minute, and we'll line them all up in just a second. There we go, and as if by magic it's all coming together now. So just as I did before when I joined the mirrored halves together, I'm just selecting edges and mating those, effectively bringing them into alignment. And I'll need to do that twice for each segment that I'm bringing in. So there'll be effectively 10 operations in total here. And all that hard work is starting to pay off now, because it's turning into something which is recognisable as what we set out to create. And although it probably isn't perfect, it's certainly close enough that at the scale in which it would be produced to look pretty respectable. So there we go, there's a carriage body with full interior. We've got doors on there. Let's put it into perspective. There we go, looks pretty good to me. So that's where I propose leaving the video for today. But before I go, I'll show you this 3D print again. Now this isn't the drawing, this isn't the carriage we have been working on here, but it's something very similar. It's a Clayton coach, but this time with the arc roof profile. Now you can see on here that I've added some of the extra detail on the underframe, the axle guards, axle boxes, springs, spring hangers and so on. Now this is a rough raw print. I've not done any cleaning up on here, and if you have a look on the bottom you can see where some of the supports were not very elegant at all. I've also dropped this one a couple of times and have broken some of the detail. However, I've got this one here which is slightly more finished, although again it's a mule. This won't ever run on a layout anywhere, but I just thought I'd show you some of the additional detail that can be incorporated. So for example, we've got here some of the brackets for the steps. Now those steps I will make out of brass. We've got little brackets to take the various handrails. If we have a look on the roof, you can see there's the bracketry for the gas lamp pipes, and inside the roof itself has facility to clip a little printed circuit board in case I should want to put lighting in here. But if we have a look at the underframe, you can see I've put some wheel sets in, and you might be able to pick up, we've got spring wires in here as well. So these wheel sets are all sprung, which is quite nice. We've got a little bit of end float on the centre axle just to help it go around corners. Anyway, there we go. That's a 3D printed railway carriage, and I hope you've enjoyed learning a little bit about how I go about producing such a thing. So till next time, thank you very much indeed for watching. I'll see you soon. Cheerio.